This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. Happy 4th, almost.
Oh, is it though?
It kind of is almost.
This is a fraught holiday in the best of times, and this year I think I'm just going to gracefully ignore it.
Yeah, have fun going nowhere, right?
I'm just hoping that after the 4th, people will stop blowing fireworks every fucking night. Are they doing it around you?
I have heard some at night for sure.
It drives me nuts. Like the other night, it woke my dog up and she made me go downstairs with her to check it out because she's a toddler. And then she came back upstairs and sat on Mikey's pillow. It was like 11 p.m. I have a human toddler dog.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're very proud of her.
Let's get through a few of these big stories. One of them that I didn't even realize until days afterwards, in Moscow, Idaho, relatively...
There's a Moscow,
Idaho.
All right.
There's a church that's like one of the mega churches in that region for sure. And they basically said, hey, we're going to hold a joint service for instead of like 3 different churches. Let's all come together in one, indoors inside of a field house, like a gymnasium. And masks, optional, whatever. So there are pictures of like 1,000 people and a pastor and no social distancing according to the couple pictures that exist.
Ooh.
And the church itself, this is just called Christ Church in Moscow. The pastor happens to be Doug Wilson, who some people might know because years ago he made a documentary with Christopher Hitchens where the two of them went around different places and did debates places. But here's what I know Doug Wilson for. Besides that, he once said same-sex marriage is worse than slavery, and he also said Christian women are a lot prettier than unbelieving lumberjack dykes, unquote.
Wow, that sentence took a journey, huh?
So this is the guy who runs Christ Church, and he said to like reporters who are like, what the hell are you doing? Are you seriously having this giant service in the midst of the pandemic? He said, we wouldn't be there if we didn't think it was safe. And then he added, we wanted to remain unified, and we did so. And a periodic joint meeting is a good way to keep the unity, which it's the pandemic. Now is not a good time to work on your church unity in person. You could have a large Zoom call.
Yeah. You could work on your unity by yourself and really focus in on your solo unity. And then when you get back after the pandemic ends in 45 years or so, then we'll be good.
So in 2 weeks or something, we'll find out how that one went.
Have you heard about Herman Cain?
So Herman Cain, the former presidential candidate, went to that Tulsa rally with Trump. One of the handful of, I don't know why he's still a thing. Like, he disappeared after 2012 or 2016? Or
did he own pizza chains or something?
Yeah, he owned a pizza chain. I can't remember what it was called. I went there once. It wasn't good.
Oh, really? Okay, now I need to know. But they took a picture at the rally, and it was like just a few of the black representation. And to their credit, there was like 8 black people in that picture, which genuinely is more than I suspected. However, I do also suspect that they might have been, rounded up for this casual picture that they took together.
Yeah.
But,
And how's Herman Cain doing now?
Oh, he's in the hospital.
Oh, really?
Unrelated.
Why is that?
So he has COVID.
I wonder where he got it.
And apparently, according to, who did I hear this from? Chris Hayes on MSNBC, or at least as of a couple days ago, there was a 100% positivity rate among those being tested. So if you went to the Tulsa rally, felt sick, got a test, 100% of the people who got tests have COVID. So I guess that little social experiment was a bit of a failure.
But the intelligence aspect of it was a huge success.
Huge success. Oh,
that IQ test worked out real well.
Yay.
Let's go to Australia for a second. Here's a story that boggles my mind for a number of reasons. In 2013, the Australian
pizza. Go ahead.
Godfather's Pizza. That's Herman Cain's thing. In 2013, the Australian government set up something they called the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse, because child abuse was happening all over the place. It wasn't just the Catholic Church. It was a lot of institutions. So they said, let's set up a government commission. Let's basically figure out what happened in all these places that went wrong. How do we prevent it from happening again? And also, how do we compensate the victims in any sort of way? Because if everyone is on their own trying to sue, it's going to go insane. Some people have the statute of limitations has passed, whatever. What do we do about this? And what they found is in various spurts, you got news dumps here and there, but it was hey, Catholic priests are definitely part of the problem. And rabbis are also part of the problem. And the Jehovah's Witnesses are part of the problem. And it was plenty of secular. Theme. Yeah, those are the religious ones. There were a lot of secular organizations too that were implicated when victims spoke out. And one of the many recommendations that the commission made after hearing testimony for years, one of the recommendations they made was create what they called a national redress scheme. Basically, it was a way for victims of child sexual abuse to say, I am a victim. I have documentation to back up all this. I'm not just randomly saying it, but I want to get some sort of payback for what happened. I won't go, I think I have this right. I won't file a lawsuit. I won't go through the courts. I won't personally sue the Catholic Church or something, but I'm in the redress scheme. Basically, the victims have proven or shown in some capacity what happened to them. And the government basically created kind of a spreadsheet that says, if you had this type of abuse, and this is what came of it or something, we give you X dollars, and now that's something. And now we can all move on. And of course, it's not a great system because one, nothing could be.
Right.
And two, they literally say in there, if the child abuse involved penetration, that is worse than if you had emotional abuse that left you traumatized. How do you hierarchy all this stuff? You really can't, but they did. So it has its issues. This is something that has been criticized and debated ad nauseum over there. But they have a redress scheme. Okay, so part of the thing is all the organizations that were implicated have to take part in it. You need the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church, from the Vatican, said, our organization is not taking part in this, but individual churches can. And to their credit, all the individual churches in Australia decided, yeah, we'll take part in this. We will pay money into the system. We will let you figure out what the compensation is. We bow out. You figure it out. But they're in this. So that's good. This week, the reason this is in the news this week is because the deadline has now passed for organizations that were implicated to join the system. And the government said, if you don't join it, and we know who you are, if you don't join it, we are going to name you and shame you. Because we have no other option here. Sure. We can't force you to do this. But if you say no, then all these victims might sue you separately. And that's not fun for anybody. And we're trying to help everybody out here. So of the organizations they named, 6 of them that did not join, one of them is the Jehovah's Witnesses. They want nothing to do with this. And the witnesses said, we don't have the institutional settings needed to be covered by the redress scheme. And their statement said, the Jehovah's Witnesses have responded and will continue to respond directly to individual claims for redress. Basically, we'll take care of it all ourselves, and we'll talk to the victims. We'll sort this all out. We don't need the government stepping in for this, which if you could have done that, you wouldn't be in this mess in the first place.
Right.
Like, even the Catholic Church is like, yeah, you deal with it because we clearly cannot. And by the way, so were the Boy Scouts over there. So were different secular organizations that work with kids. They all said, look, we are clearly not capable of doing this, and we are going to take part in this as a, if nothing else, bad word choice, as a show of camaraderie. We want to help the system. If this is a way to give victims some closure, sure, we'll participate in the system and let the government sort it out.
And it's kind of an opportunity for them to say, like, it's not a systemic problem in our community. It's bad apples, and they can at least pretend. I mean, it's almost never true, but
right,
gives them the face to say, like, look, we're trying to fix it. We're trying to find the bad people in our group, and getting rid of them is, not sincere that might be.
So everyone except the Jehovah's Witnesses right now. And again, what do you do if you're the government? You can only kind of shame them all and say, well, they're not joining. But you can't force them to do it. But it's just one of those, God, they just keep getting worse. Oh.
Yeah, I'm curious what the motivation is.
I don't think they trust the government. Again, the Jehovah's Witnesses are people who don't vote on purpose. Like, that is a religious rule they have. They don't want to be vote. Yeah, they don't celebrate birthdays either. They don't want to have anything to do with government. And so here's a government opportunity to kind of like start from scratch in a sense, and they just aren't doing it. So that's disappointing for their victims, but who knows if they'll change their minds in the near future. Okay, here's a story for you. You're going to love this. Here's what happened in 2015.
Okay.
In Missouri, there's a guy who owns a couple gas stations. It happens to be called Doc's Stop. So it's a chain that's popular in that part of Missouri. So this guy owns 2 Doc's Stop gas stations and the convenience stores that are attached to them. Basically, he's a guy with some money. And so he says, can I just hire someone to manage these 2 locations? And then I don't have to deal with this all day. Like, win-win for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Hires this woman to manage both of them. Her name is Janine Poe. So she manages the 2
Poe
places.
or Pope?
P-O-E.
Poe.
Like Edgar Allan. So Janine Poe is managing these 2 places. And in 2015, she tells the owner, hey, these 2 places are not doing well. You need to invest more money in them. I don't know, clean it up or get more stuff. I don't know what the deal is. But she says you need to invest more money in these stores. So the guy does. And then a couple years later, 2019, she tells him, hey, things are still not picking up. You need to invest more. So now the owner tells a buddy of his, I don't know if the guy was an investigator or a CPA or what. He's like, I need you to go through these books and figure out if she's legit. Are we really screwing up or what?
It took 5 years for him to double check her work.
I don't know what happened in the interim, but this guy gets his friend to do it. And basically the friend says, you're being conned. And now the U.S. District Attorney's Office, gets involved in the air. So now they're investigating. And what they found is that Janine Poe, I'm going to read from the DA's statement here. She had obtained at least 7 credit cards in the name of the gas station business.
Whoa.
Maxed them all out.
Whoa.
And they used that money, her and her husband used that money for random other stuff like trips and businesses. Trips and personal things. It's not like they were spending it on the business. Oh, and by the way, they basically transferred a lot of money from the business's bank account to their personal bank account.
Whoops.
So the government, the investigators found all this out. And this week, they basically arrested these 2, the husband and wife. They charged them. They charged the wife with, a wire fraud. They charged her husband with a thing I've never heard of until this week, which was misprision of a felony, which means basically, which I think means he knew she was doing this, but he told a lie about it. So he was on this. He knew what was going on. Lied to the owner. One of the things that they said in the statement is that the business owner asked the husband, hey, I see shenanigans going on. Is your wife doing something? And the husband's like, no, she's not doing anything weird. And because of that, the investigation, like the owner's understanding that he's being scammed, it got delayed because he's like, well, I trust him. And so basically now they're catching the husband on this too. So that's where the statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office ended. Okay. Here's what I also found out this week. Her husband, whose name is Lew Poe, L-E-W, he's a pastor at a Baptist church in Missouri.
Whoa.
And he has been for like almost 2 decades. He was a youth pastor, and then he became their lead pastor last year. And not only that, I found statements on their Facebook page for the church. I'm going to read this statement. It's from 2016, which means the con may have been happening as they're posting this. Don't forget that we have implemented new ways of giving for your convenience. See Janine Poe if you have questions. Or in 2015, new ways to tithe each week for your convenience. See Janine Poe if you have any questions. Like someone at this church needs to double check the finances. Christ. I spoke to someone connected to the church who wanted to remain anonymous, but they basically said this is not a church that opens its books to even the members. There's maybe a board of elders that kind of has access to that stuff, but they haven't talked about it. I watched their service on Sunday live stream. They didn't mention it. And from what I can tell, this Sunday, Lew Poe is still going to be in the pulpit.
Sure.
Like, why not? Because they haven't been charged. Technically, they haven't been found guilty. So he's still going back into the pulpit, even though...
Is there an estimation of how much she stole?
They did not say that in the statement.
But you said 7 credit cards and maxed them all out? 7 credit cards
maxed out.
Jeez.
And that's in addition to just cash being withdrawn from the business account.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that was a trip.
The moral majority.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court, because this week they issued probably the biggest church-state separation ruling they've had in years. This is a case called Espinoza v. Montana something. Board of Education, maybe? No, Montana Department of Revenue. There we go. Here's my best attempt to explain it, because let me tell you what the Supreme Court released on Wednesday or Tuesday or something. What they released was a 93-page decision, which is unusually large for any of their statements. It was John Roberts writing for the conservative majority, but also 3 of the other conservative justices said, well, I have my own separate opinion about this. So they issued their statements. The dissenters had 3 different dissents. So there were like 7 opinions floating around, even though Roberts was the main one. But basically, everyone was trying to figure out, what the hell did you actually do here? So let me try to give you a little background in this story. In 2015, the Montana legislature, which is like all Republican, they passed a bill giving $150 income tax credit if you made a donation to private schools. So if you give $150 for a scholarship to a private school, they will let you write that off on your taxes at the end of the year or whatever. Okay, but those private schools included, the government actually set up a scholarship program called Big Sky Scholarships. They said, look, if you give money to this state-run scholarship program, you could get the write-off. Well, there were like 13 schools that ended up getting money from that scholarship program, private schools. 12 of them were Christian. So basically, it's a way to funnel money through the government to these religious schools, and the government's rewarding you for it if you do that. And so people sued. This went to the Montana Supreme Court, and the Montana Supreme Court ruled a few years ago, you can't do that. We actually, in Montana, have a part of our Constitution that explicitly says public money cannot fund private religious education. No public money for sectarian schools. And they said, that's what you're doing. You're giving people a reward for basically giving money to private religious schools. And so they said it was unconstitutional. They did not say you can give money to the private scholarship program, just no religious schools. They said this program that was set up by the legislature, it's just broken. So we're saying the law is invalid. The law that set up the program is out. Okay, so they said we're not singling out religious schools here. We're saying the law was broken, so we're overturning it. So this is what went to the Supreme Court. Religious people were suing, saying that law wasn't invalid. Let us have it back. Mm-hmm. And the plaintiff was a woman named something Espinoza, who said, without getting a scholarship for a private school, my daughters can't go to the Christian private school of her choice, which I don't buy because, yes, she can. Like, religious schools can offer scholarships to kids, and donors can fund scholarships for kids. But the government doesn't need to get you a reward. Yeah, it's not that complicated. So this is what the case was, gets to the Supreme Court. And this week, the Supreme Court says the Montana invalidation of that law, the Montana Supreme Court that said you can't have it, they were wrong. Okay. We're overturning that. Okay. So what does that mean? As far as I can tell, what that means is the law that said, let's set up the scholarship fund, anyone can get a scholarship, it's back in play, which means religious schools can get that funding now, and people can get a tax benefit from giving to the religious schools. But one of the things I want to point out, Sonia Sotomayor, in her dissent, she actually wrote very clearly, not only is the court wrong to decide this case at all, it decides it wrongly. Today's ruling is perverse. And the thing she said is our court, the Supreme Court, the court appears to require a state to reinstate a tax credit program that the Constitution never demanded in the first place. Like, since when does the Supreme Court say, hey, that law you decided doesn't work? Nope, you got to put it back in now.
Turns out we love that law.
Yeah, like, it's not, they're saying if the legislature wants it, they can rewrite a new law if they want. No. They're saying, no, that law you used to have, put it back. Which means, like, I think one of the justices even said, does that mean, this is back to Sotomayor. It appears that the court has declared that once Montana created a tax subsidy, it forfeited the right to eliminate it if doing so would harm religion. Like, once you create the law, now they can't get rid of it all of a sudden? That's weird.
Wow.
And so I think what this means, and this is based on what a number of First Amendment scholars have said, basically, if any state offers vouchers or a program that uses taxpayer money to help people go to private schools, they must allow religious schools to be a part of that system, which is so messed up because there's, I think, 29 states and DC and Puerto Rico that have systems like voucher programs that lets kids go to the school of their choice, including private schools. And now they're basically saying, well, religious schools can't be excluded from that. It's, I think, the first time public money, taxpayer money, has I think a few years ago, there was a case where there was like a church that wanted a playground. And the Supreme Court said the state was offering playground renovations to anyone who wanted to apply for the grant. You can't tell a church you can't apply for the grant. That's unfair to the church. They just wanted to fix their playground. There's nothing weird about that. Well, this is the first time they're saying, no, give the money to the religious school. And if a religious school proselytizes, if they teach creationism, if they discriminate against gay people in hiring, so what? That's none of our concern here. So that's why this is so devastating. They're finally allowing public money to go to religious schools.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah. So big problem. I think a lot of people are still trying to parse out where do things go from here? Because you may see a lot of lawsuits then of people saying, well, in our state, they offer private school benefits for some people. Like, we'll give you a tax break, or we'll give you money to go to a private school. And now they're going to sue in order to get religious schools in the mix.
Jesus. Oh, cool. Glad the world's going really well. Do you want to talk about Rand Paul?
Let's do it.
So, Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, who is a doctor, which I think he's an ophthalmologist.
Yeah.
So, a real medical expert. So he was, so Fauci, Dr. Fauci.
He can be a medical expert, but he's a medical expert in ophthalmology. And that's it.
They don't do a lot of vaccinations when it comes to eyeballs, if I recall correctly.
Right.
So Dr. Fauci, we've all heard of him, the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, didn't know allergy was in there. He and some other health officials testified before the Senate committee on the state of the pandemic. At that time, Fauci, rightly, said that the country is heading in the wrong direction and that he wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. surged to 100,000 cases per day. Mm-hmm. So Rand Paul was there for good reasons. He said that, and I quote, "It's important to realize that if society meekly submits to an expert and that expert is wrong, a great deal of harm may occur. We shouldn't presume that a group of experts somehow knows what's best for everyone." So
let's trash experts. What do experts know besides the thing they are experts at? What I don't get is it's not a random expert. They're not saying just trust everyone with a PhD. They're saying Fauci knows infectious diseases, so maybe listen to that guy when it comes to infectious diseases. And Rand Paul's like, you don't need to listen to experts.
What if Rand Paul was your eye doctor and you brought your child in and Rand Paul was like, your child needs glasses. That's why they're squinting and getting headaches and can't see anything.
Then I would say, I don't listen to experts. What do you know?
Yeah, what do you know? If I know my child better than anyone. So if you and all your wisdom and education and your doctorate and your fancy degrees thinks my kid needs glasses, then I think you're working for Big Glasses Corporation, run by John Glasses, the founder of Glasses, a descendant of Benjamin Franklin.
Totally realistic. Yes.
Thank you. I think it is incredible how I continue to be surprised at the depths of depravity of the Republican Party and their followers.
I don't know why you're surprised.
I don't either. I'm so...
Rand Paul is up for election in 2022, and I kind of hope Charles Booker, who lost the race to Amy McGrath this week, that would be a race.
That would be great. Kentucky, you're really batting 1,000 with your senators. Sorry, guys.
Dude, everyone.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't understand what they think their goal. What's the end plan of this? Is it just to dismantle all government and expertise?
Yeah, the cycle that they're in is Republicans say government sucks, and then the Republicans that are in government do nothing, which makes government suck. Right. And then they go around and say, see, government sucks, we should make it do less. And it's just a cycle to nowhere. And unfortunately, when they're in charge, then their whole thing is, no, we're not going to do anything. What? Bills are piling up? No.
I'm imagining 3 months in the future that other senators are going to be like, government is worthless. Our own senators don't believe experts. So what should they be doing up here? And just it's just a Ouroboros thing and they eat their own tail. And then we all end up in hell.
Yeah.
I'm
not surprised, but it's frustrating because Rand Paul is one of the literal only people who can do something. He has a position of power. You would think a guy who is an expert, or at least went through medical school, even if he's not an expert in infectious diseases, might respect science more than your average Republican. And no, he's the one saying, don't listen to the ones who know it, who've studied this their whole lives.
It's so frustrating to watch this play out in real time. And from COVID to police brutality, of just watching everybody in DC, and I am roping Democrats in with that too, just shrug emoji, what can you do? I guess police are just going to murder black people for funsies. Oh, I guess 250,000 people are going to fucking die in the next few days or weeks or months or whatever. And like, I don't know what we can do about it because we have the freedom to die.
Do you remember growing up hearing like, we need less government, government's the problem, or phrases to that extent? And now I'm just like, government's not the problem. It's basically one party that hates the government and works to sabotage it. Because like, I can have reasonable arguments with democratic policies where it's like, you don't go far enough, you need to do something different, you need to do more. But that's very different than, nope, we're just going to set everything on fire, which is the Republican goal. Like, they're not passing bills, they don't want to.
You know what it is? It's that woman who was running the convenience stores and kept like fucking shit up and then turning back to the owner and being like, I don't know, shit's fucked up. You need to give me more money, or like, you need to give me the thing I want. I don't know what's going wrong. I certainly can't do anything to stop it, but please give me money or give me the thing I want. Like, they're fucking
Can you
children.
imagine how many let's assume there's a future. And imagine they do investigations into the present time in this
future. Is that what you just said?
Sure. Imagine what the investigations into all the corruption that's going on right now. How much shit are they going to uncover? Like, I wish Biden would just say, whatever they're hiding right now, we're going to release it the second I'm in office. Like, forget aliens, forget Area 50, whatever it was. Like, who cares? Famously. Everything that they're hiding and covering up, I'm going to release it to congressional committees and let them investigate and let their lawyers do their work. Like, what will we find in terms of where money went, in terms of who's getting contracts?
But like, it's not like who is Rand Paul playing into? You know what I mean? Like, who is this stupid and terrible point of view? Who is that ultimately benefiting? Like, Rand, your voters are extremely old and fragile. You're going to kill them.
There was a profile of Mitch McConnell, maybe in the New York Times Magazine a couple of weeks ago. And basically the whole thing was, what does he want? What is he, who's he trying to hit? It would be one thing if it's just like all he does in government is enrich himself. And he does kind of, but the bigger thing is everyone who's known him for his whole life are all like, he doesn't actually care about any of that. He just wants power, and he wants to keep power and get more power. Oh, what does he do with that power? And everyone's nothing. Like, we nothing. We don't know. The goal is acquiring power, not to do anything with it.
He's a fucking psychopath. And I mean that in the actual technical term. I think that man has no sense of morality and no empathy. I mean, at least in the Obama years, we knew his goals, right? His goals were first to make Obama to make Obama a one-term president. And then when that
it's winning for the sake of winning. That's it. That's Trump's thing too. What does he want to do for what didn't they ask him this week? What's your second term agenda? And then he filibustered and gave some answer about golfing or some shit. Like, he doesn't have an answer for what he wants to do because he doesn't want to do anything. He just wants to be president and hold like white supremacy rallies. And it's harder to do that when you're not the president.
And we know objectively Trump hates being the president. Like,
he hates working for and doing the stuff we expect.
You're right. You're right. He hates working as the president. He loves being the president.
Yeah, he likes to hail to the chief when he walks into the room, but
he likes people saluting him. He likes yelling in front of helicopters. All the things, all the classic presidential things. I think that's what's scary to me. Maybe is that there is no hidden agenda. Their goal is to be in power and then see what happens next, I guess.
And in Trump's case, like, being president means they can't like take him to court for anything. And the second he's not president, he's so screwed. And so that's his only incentive now, to avoid anyone being able to come after him.
Yeah, it's truly mind-boggling and just so disappointing, which is such a silly, petty word. Yeah.
Remember months ago when they could have impeached him and had Mike Pence and everything Republicans ever dreamed of, and they said, nope, still love Trump, which oh my God, I don't understand that even for them.
That was what made me bonkers during the hearings. Is like, well, they just want to undo 2016 and they want to get vengeance for Hillary Clinton or whatever. And it's like, hey, sir, like, we passed second grade, so we know that if the president is removed from office, the vice president takes over.
They could have everything. You could get you think Mike Pence is going to pick liberal judges? No, you can have all the judges and none of the drama. Mm-hmm. Like, you could have done that. And all but Mitt Romney was like, nope. I don't know. My God, I saw my parents last week. We went to the same park that I was at today, except for it was 100 degrees out today. Really should have rethought that. It was quite hot in the prairie where there are no trees. But I was like, I don't understand who is in favor of Mike Pence. He is the least charismatic human being to ever walk the earth, and all he cares about is like hating gay people. And my dad described him, a Republican for his entire life up until 2016, described him as a world-class suck-up, and that's what Trump likes. And that's
I think we hit the nail on the head there.
You know, when Mike Pence took the job and they're all like, well, Trump is like a pussy grabbing horrible person. Why do you want this? Why do you want to be his right-hand man? And Pence was basically like, God has called me to this role for some reason. And it's entirely possible that these 4 years will go by and let's say Trump loses the election. What do you think if you're Mike Pence at that point? Like, I guess perversely, it could have made sense where it's like, well, Trump might get impeached and God put me here to take over for him. I can see that logic, but at some point, but if that doesn't happen and Trump just loses and leaves, let's say that happens, what goes through Mike Pence's head? Like, what was the point of all that? Like, I ruined the country. I didn't get anything out of this. I made Christianity look worse than usual. Like, what's the upside if you're Pence?
I don't know. I don't know anymore. Like, I think that's we get so in the weeds about, like, you know, they're attacking Roe, they're attacking gay marriage, whatever the flavor of the week that they hate this week is. But like, long term, what does Pence do? Like, did he think he could overturn gay marriage? Did he think he could like turn that dial back?
I don't know. I still don't know what he thinks his job is. I mean, it's kind of amazing that he's become a non-factor because Trump is everything and he sucks up all the oxygen. But honestly, policy-wise, it's not like you hear Pence's name saying Pence is steering this committee, like he's leading the COVID team.
Bang up job on that.
Yeah, right. Like, that didn't work.
Which, P.S., he did that a few years ago in Indiana with an HIV pandemic. What's a smaller one? Epidemic.
Yeah, and then
I can't even think of the word epidemic because everything's a fucking pandemic now. And he fucked that up too. Like, I know I shouldn't be surprised anymore, Hemant, and I know I say this week after week, but I think a little part of me thinks, God, they have to have some sort of moral compass, and they don't.
Yeah, and their voters don't either, and they're going to do it. I mean, this came out this week. I didn't even write this one down. The Pew Research Center put out a survey this week because we've talked about how Trump may be losing support of some white evangelical voters, maybe because of the tear gassing, holding up a Bible in front of a church stunt, maybe because of the pandemic, and I guess killing 100,000 people might affect a couple people. But actually, Pew Research said, do you approve of Trump? And a whole bunch of white evangelicals, like, I forgot the number, but it was close to 60%, something. We're like, yes, I approve of the job he's doing. But a lot of people said, no, I don't. But then they said, are you going to vote for Trump or Biden? And this is taken last week. Like, the survey happened last week after a bunch of shit. And 82% of white evangelicals said, yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump, which means even people who don't think he's doing a good job are going to vote for him. Which is, by the way, the same number, 81%, I think, voted for him, white evangelicals, in 2016. They haven't budged. And no matter, even if a few of them are like, well, I didn't like that you tear gassed all those people, but they're still going to vote for him.
Well, that's great, because Trump is doing his fucking damnedest to kill all those people. So what the fuck ever. I mean, I genuinely thought that we saw the lows of we saw the true depravity of our country in 2016 when we allowed Trump to become president. And now when we're saying, we said for like 2 months, hey, could you stay home? Could you wear a mask? A lot of people are going to die. We don't want them to die. We want to get back to normal. And asking people to wear a mask, which is the simplest thing anybody can do, is like becoming this politicized bullshit argument. It's like the rough equivalent of walking around with an AR-15 into a Target or whatever, just to show that you can. It's so bizarre and
remember when we stayed home in March and April and stuff? None of that matters.
In June?
May. Yeah, like none of it matters because too many people are like, nah, I'm bored. It's June. Let's go out. And now we're right back to worse than when we started.
I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. The restaurants by us are opening back up.
Congrats. I'm not eating there.
I'm not, literally, I am going to become a Hobbit person. I am never going to leave my little hole, and I'm going to go on adventures with a ring sometimes. Like, I don't know, man. I'm sad, It's
to the point where certain places that I go through drive-through or something, I'll say the first item and they're like, here's the other 3 things your family needs, right? I'm like, yes.
Ooh, Panera. It's Panera, isn't it?
Sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Yep. And if I don't get one of the things or something, they're like, is everything all right? I'm like, I'm good.
Sir?
Don't worry.
Was there death in the family?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's sad, but
man,
welcome to life. Let's talk about a predator. Okay, here's
about what?
A predator. There's a church in California. There's a church in California called Menlo Church. Huge mega church in California. There are many of them. This one is run by a guy who has a popular name in the white evangelical community. His name is John Ortberg. This is a pastor who used to work at Willow Creek outside of Chicago, which is kind of a breeding ground for a lot of famous pastors, and now he runs this place in California. So the story that popped up earlier this year is that people found out publicly that this guy had allowed a volunteer who had admitted an attraction to minors.
No.
He let that volunteer work with children, despite knowing that. Now, there's no record of any incidents. No one has suggested any wrongdoing occurred. The bigger issue is that someone has this attraction. The person has admitted it, and yet this pastor's thing was like, it's fine. Let him work with kids. And by the way, it wasn't just like working Sunday school with a bunch of other adults. It was he's traveling with kids on overnight trips.
Oh, no.
Some of the other volunteering stuff that this guy ran was unsupervised. Again, no reports of any wrongdoing. But the fact, you knew this and you still let it happen, that's how it's gonna happen.
Read the room. Have you seen what's been going on with churches? Your reputation isn't great.
And so the pastor, Ortberg, he apologized and he took a leave of absence. This is at the beginning of the year. And by the way, the reason we knew all this is because his son, Daniel, posted it online saying, I tried to tell the board of elders, hey, I found out this volunteer has admitted to this. You guys got to do something about it. Mm-hmm. And they really didn't. And so Daniel, the son, said on Twitter, all right, well, they're not doing anything, so I will tell you all this happened. That's when the pastor apologized. That's when the board of directors were like, we'll investigate whatever. One of the reasons they didn't take Daniel's warnings seriously, though, because he is the pastor's son, but he's estranged from his dad.
Oh.
So one of the reasons his warnings were dismissed is because Daniel and his wife are transgender. This is according to Daniel. They didn't take me seriously because of that. In fact, he said that after he informed his dad / the pastor and the board, of this volunteer, they basically, I'm not paraphrasing the church, I'm paraphrasing what Daniel said. They said to him, pedophilia is like homosexuality, they're both sins and it's bad, that the most important thing we could do is maintaining secrecy about all this, and that Daniel lack standing to offer some alternative form of treatment for like whatever it is you want us to do. We're not going to take you seriously because of your transition. So basically, Daniel's warnings, even though they were right on the ball, they did not pay attention to him. And the pastor at most said, I'm going to apologize and I'll take a leave of absence. Well, guess what? Now he's back in the pulpit, the pastor. Like nothing happened to him. He's just back. And the church's elders, they did an investigation. So they said, we hired an independent person to look into the pastor's actions or lack thereof. They said nothing substantive was ever found. They said, I'm quoting from their...
a lot of quotes around like an impartial third party or whatever he said.
I'm not sure how impartial it is, but the elders said the board has not found any misconduct in the Menlo church community. Nevertheless, the investigation showed John Ortberg, the pastor, John exhibited poor judgment. That was it. That's all we got. They said poor judgment. Okay, that's what happened at the beginning of the year. Guess what happened this week?
Tell me.
Daniel, the son, who was not listened to, posts again on Twitter and says, basically, I wasn't impressed with the investigation because I know the investigator did not speak to key witnesses who were aware of things that were going on. His father, John Ortberg, came back to the pulpit without acknowledging anything he did wrong. And the board of elders basically insinuated Daniel was mentally unstable because he's trans. So he's not happy with any of this. So guess what he posts on Twitter this week? He says, well, I'm going to publish the letter that I sent to the board of elders at the church. I'm going to post it online, and I'm not going to redact information that I might have redacted otherwise. So, like, he'll cover up kids' names.
Oh, okay.
Who said, like, I was around this person by myself. Sure. He said, I'll cover up the kids' names. Who he's not covering up is the name of the volunteer who admitted to these problems. Who is that person?
Tell me.
Daniel's brother, John's other son. Oh,
what a twist!
What a twist. So the brother admitted to Daniel. Yeah, the brother admitted to Daniel, I'm attracted to kids or something. Daniel's like, holy shit. Tells his father about this because the brother is working with kids. And what does the dad do? Jack shit. And it gets to the point where he's like, well, maybe the church will look into it. Maybe they will say, we don't care if it's your son. We weren't asking you to shame him, but don't let him work with kids. Yeah. You could have said that. You could have done, nope, didn't do any of that.
Or like get him to therapy,
or something.
Things that help people.
Right. And none of that happened. So Daniel went online. He's like, fine, then I'm going to post this now. Post the letter. And now there's a much bigger call from the outside for the church to take some sort of action. Like, okay. What are you going to do? Are you going to fire the pastor now? Nothing's happened yet. But it's not just him. It's the entire elders. Like the whole church's top leadership failed at every turn. And again, nothing physical has happened, and that's great. But again, if this were any other situation and you knew someone was a problem, or you hired somebody who was known to have this history, you couldn't hire them. You shouldn't hire them. Like,
no, and it's wild because you would think in this instance, because it's his own son, it would be much easier to quietly like quash this, right? Like just pull him aside at like dinner or whatever, and we're like, listen, whatever he wants to say about how he feels or whatever, but like you understand you can't work with kids, son, right? Like you get why that.
And what Daniel said in his letter is that when he approached his father, one of the reasons his father did not want to do anything, I'm looking for the exact words, but I don't see it. But one of the things the father said is like their other son is suicidal. Like if we take him away from this thing that he loves, then that's a reason for his depression to get even worse.
And
But-
I'm sure they also got him therapy and medication for
Right,
his suicidal tendencies, because that's what a responsible person would do for their struggling family member.
According to Daniel's letter, my father has not reported the brother's condition to anyone at Menlo, but rather has continued to encourage him to work in a variety of positions with young people. I take this choice to be entirely at odds with his responsibilities as a mandated reporter, as well as his stated vocation as a pastor. He also wrote, in the most charitable reading possible, my parents have acted with unconscionable disregard for their responsibilities as leaders, ministers, and parents. There are far more disturbing possibilities even than that. And they didn't do anything with this letter, so he posted it online.
Jesus. Oof, that's
I don't have
heavy,
anything
man.
to add, but it was heavy, and the fallout is still happening, so we'll see what comes of it, I guess. But yeah, scary stuff all around. Here's a slightly, I don't know if there's any better. I'm just going through my list here. There's a pastor at a Catholic church in Indianapolis, Father Theodore Rothrock, and he's the head of St. Elizabeth Seton Catholic Church in Indianapolis. He posts his weekly pastor-priest letter to the congregation, and one thing he wrote about last week was that he really hates Black Lives Matter, the movement. He's like, I like black people, but Black Lives Matter is horrible, much like Antifa.
And I'm sure he loves black people.
I don't know how many friends he has. Here's what he wrote, and tell me if you could spot the problem. The only lives that matter are their own, he's mocking them, and the only power they seek is their own. They are wolves in wolves' clothing, masked thieves and bandits, seeking only to devour the life of the poor and profit from the fear of others. They are maggots and parasites at best.
At best.
At best. And then he goes on to say Black Lives Matter and Antifa were trying to, quote, replant a new species of human made in the likeness of man and not in the image of God.
I have no notes, actually.
The president of Antifa is going to be very upset to learn about any of this.
Oh, yeah. Oh my goodness. They're going to have a board meeting.
Right. So he posted this last week, and now the whole diocese in Lafayette is like in damage control. Bishop Timothy Doherty said, I expect Father Rothrock to issue a clarification about his intended message. There was none. The intention, like, what did they do? They deleted it from his website and basically shut down his entire website.
Well, yeah, you can't ask somebody to clarify their message when their message was extraordinarily clear.
Yeah, it wasn't code.
Like, do you want him to go deeper into why he hates black people? Or
right. Rothrock said in a statement that came out later this week, that he's somewhat surprised by the reaction, but it was not my intention to offend anyone.
Oh, boy.
So here's what the church has done since then. This is as of a couple days ago. They suspended him from ministry.
Sure.
But they said in their statement, various possibilities for his public continuation in priestly ministry are being considered. They're looking up other jobs that this guy could do. Not firing him, just saying, wonder what else he can do.
Let's give him a lateral move.
Yup.
Try another ladder.
Lateral moves is like what got the Catholic Church in all their problems in the first place, and they're still going to that one.
Can we talk about how fucking wild it is that there are two sides to the argument, should children be molested by authority figures? And there's two, like, if I say my opinion, okay, children should not be molested physically or emotionally by anybody, specifically people in power.
Aren't you a rebel?
And there is a large contingency of people who heard what I say and think, okay, well, let's take it easy. Can we settle on some children should be molested by their elders? Or, like, do we have a number that we're comfortable working with? Like, it is, like, I'm like, oh my God, Hemet, what is going on? Is this my personal nightmare?
That's 2020 for you. Guess how much the Catholic Church spent in the U.S. on sexual abuse cases, settling them, dealing with lawyers, whatever. How much did they spend in 2019?
I'm going to guess 4 gold thrones worth of money.
How much is a gold throne?
$1 billion.
Not quite. Close. $281,611,817. $281 million on allegation-related costs. By the way, only 41 million of that was covered by insurance.
Oh, they have molestation insurance.
They have molestation insurance at the church.
Cool. And that didn't throw up a red flag to anybody in particular?
Yeah, you go to your insurance
I'm here to sell insurance.
On?
I'm knocking on your door. Hey, it's me, Jessica Insuranceman. I've got a couple policies.
You need to talk about the names you come up with for these jobs.
I've got fire insurance. I've got flood insurance. I have insurance for if many of your leaders systemically attack children. That one I'm just going to throw in with the fire and the flood because you think you'll never need it and we hope you'll never need it. But you just never know when you'll have a systemic group of people who are molesting children and then seeing no repercussions of it and having no empathy towards the children. Let's just throw it on the pile. I'm going to throw it in with the flood and fire.
In 2014, they only spent $106 million.
Sure.
So it's on the rise. Now, I should say one of the reasons that actually skyrocketed in the 2019 report that just came out, the reason it was up so much in 2019 is because a handful of states passed laws, like New York being the big one, saying if you were molested as a child and the statute of limitations is over, our new law gives you a 1-year window to file lawsuits, and we don't care about the statute of limitations. So if you want to go after your abuser, now's the time to do it. And a bunch of people did. And so that's why it's higher than usual. But I mean, again, is there any number here that ought to be normal? And again, we joke about the insurance thing, but that means what, $240 million was paid by what? Tithe money or other Catholic Church holdings. That's where your money's going.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will. If you still believe in what the Catholic Church teaches or whatever, fine. But understand that when you are putting money in that basket every week, or I bet they have a little Q, one of those swipey guys, a square. God, that would have been
Which
funny.
Which is how the priests get money at the Catholic Church.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's attached to their little wafer. When you're giving them money, this is what it's going to. You can't, I'm sure your church is very nice and I'm sure your pastor is very nice. Right? How confident are you? And understand that money is trickling up to gold throne status.
Yeah. The report from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops also said there were 4,434 total allegations this year, which is more than triple the year prior. That's a lot because of those new laws. But here's one thing I read that was interesting in that report. There were 4,400 accusations. They were leveled against 3,000 priests and other Catholic leaders, some of them more than once, obviously.
Sure.
But of those 3,000 priests, this is in the report, 1,593 are dead because it happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
They said about 138 are temporarily and 321 are permanently removed from ministry. But 83 of those 3,000 priests are active in the church because the allegations have not been found to be credible just yet or haven't led to charges. These are the numbers they're working with right now in the U.S. alone, not globally.
It's a little frightening. So you said, I'm sorry, I might get these numbers. You said around 4,400 allegations against about 3,000 priests.
Yes.
So to me, that is so much more scary than if there was 4,000 allegations against 500 priests. That means like this, it's not just a few bad apples. There are so many people that on average, they're only molesting 1.5 kid per person. That means you have many people with a problem. Like, how is the Catholic Church still fighting again? Why don't they say we're fucking cleaning house? We need to, for no other reason.
Because they don't have anybody. They have a priest shortage because like no one's inspired enough to go in there.
Look what they did for CPS. Just consolidate fucking churches and pack 1,000 people per church. Like they put 45 kids per classroom in CPS. Like we've all had to deal with this bullshit. Now you guys do too. Like, there is no excuse for saying like, yeah, this guy has 3 or 4 allegations, but they're pretty suspect. So we're just going to go ahead and like, just let him ride until we get this down to brass tacks here.
The craziest response to the church's report came from the Catholic League's Bill Donahue, the guy who constantly yells about everything, who praised the church because, according to him, when he crunched the numbers, 99.98% of priests did not have a substantiated accusation made against them. In other words, clergy sexual abuse is near 0%.
Oh my God. You want to talk about how good rounding is in math? You know that he counted literally every priest who has ever existed, right?
He said, of the 49,900 members of the clergy, only, 0.07% of them had an accusation made against them now, like still alive, happened this year. And only 8 of those claims could be substantiated. We're talking about this year alone. Those are the only ones that count. If it happened in the past, he does not care. And he also leaves out any priest being investigated.
Man, I don't know. Like,
celebrate.
We've talked at length about us as atheists, as liberals, or whatever, like what we would do with the same thing. And I would remove Al Franken from office 1,000 times rather than sound like this guy being like, well, yeah, one of our senators has had misconduct allegations against him, but the vast majority haven't. So if you round, it's 0. So everybody carry on. Everybody just pretend nothing happened because I can round.
Yep. I got one last story for you. This is from our friends at the Creation Museum. They were talking on Answers in Genesis. The Answers in Genesis people were talking on their like YouTube show where they talk about news stories. And
are they still doing it together or are they doing it remote?
Oh, they're doing it together in person with a live studio audience. But there's a few inches of separation between the hosts.
Sure.
They were saying, oh, look at all those monuments being toppled over, and that's bad because that is cancel culture. And we, how will we know history without a statue praising Confederates and stuff like that? Sure. Here's where they were going with it. If you're going to cancel all these people and if you're going to topple statues, we should cancel Charles Darwin. And they said, because he was extremely racist and yet he's celebrated. Why are we not upset about Darwin and wanting to cancel him?
Was Darwin famously racist?
He was. So here's the best analogy I can come up with for you. Was he let's put it this way. Mitt Romney is a Republican. But he voted for impeachment. So, like, as far as Republicans go, he's not the worst, but he is a Republican still. So he's bad, but there are a lot of other people that did a lot of worse stuff.
Yeah,
and so this is Darwin. Like, he fought against slavery, but also he was like a rich white guy in Victorian Britain. In the mid-1800s, did he say things we would call racist now? Like, did he call people savages?
Sure.
Yeah. And so in that sense, sure, he was racist.
And I would also say that I would argue nobody worships at the altar of Darwin, and nobody would argue. Myself, I have a Darwin tattoo, and I would never say like everything he said was gold. I would say that he was a person who moved science forward in a very, very important way.
Which is the way they talk about him, the creationist, the way they talk about him, they make it sound like everyone learns his life story and worships at his feet because he's amazing. And you're right, like, no. The only reason his name comes up is because he put together this idea that had been floating for a long time, and he codified it and he publicized it, and that's what we associate with him. But hey, tell you what, let's say he's the most racist dude who ever existed, and in his spare time he like put on a white hood and went to parties or something. It wouldn't change the science.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. You can cancel him all you want. He is not relevant to the science of evolution and the foundational underpinning of science that it is. He is incidental. Like, that's how science works. If Isaac Newton was discovered to hold a bunch of horrible views, gravity would still work, or whatever it is. Like,
can I tell you one fun fact about Charles Darwin that I learned recently? So one of my favorite podcasts, The Dollop, that I talk about all the time, they did an episode on the voyage of the HMS Beagle, which is Darwin's ship. It's episode 415. It came out in February, I think. And Darwin was he was a prolific writer. He journaled all the time. And one of his chief complaints on his voyage is that he couldn't get into the hammock because he kept trying to get in feet first. And it is an image that I think about once a week, and it delights me that one of the smartest men of his age couldn't make a hammock work. It is wild. I cannot recommend that episode more highly.
Had the creationists known this, they would have destroyed evolution, but instead, that's all I got. I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go to all the parties now. So
yeah, can't wait. I'm gonna have some people.
I'll watch Hamilton.
My home. Are you gonna watch Hamilton tonight?
I'm at the intermission.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Are you enjoying it so far?
I totally am.
Oh my God, it's so good. So at 6 our time, I think they're doing like a live tweet thing, like a view along. So I already watched it today, but I might again. I cried several times. It's one of those things that like I cannot.
The first thing I've watched on Disney Plus all year.
Oh my God. I had to subscribe to Disney Plus to get it because we didn't have it.
That gift subscription from Christmas from the relatives finally came in handy.
It's just really, truly wild for something to be as overhyped as anything has ever been. And it's that good. It totally holds up. It's the
first line in the New York Times review from when the show came out. The first line is, yes, it really is that good.
It really is that good. Like, I'm mad about it almost. How dare, and just, whatever. Yeah. It's great. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I cried a lot. No big deal.
I know. The only downside is not being able to watch it with people, like in person, because that would have been a viewing party everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would have been someday, but yeah, that would have been a lot of fun. But, okay, so Hemant, where can we find you online?
I am at Hemant Mehta on Twitter. You can go to friendlyatheist.com for stories. Go to patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast for bonus episodes of this and Jessica watching movies.
Yeah, we have been watching. What did we watch recently? Oh, we watched The Island, which is like an 2005 or so Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson Michael Bay flick. That episode is as long as the movie, which is to say almost 2.5 hours, and it is. We talked for maybe 40 minutes about the movie and just sort of went on this like vision quest about our thoughts on movies writ large. It was extremely fun for me. So there's that. If you want to hear more from me and my husband, we also have a podcast called Cooper Duper. We are rewatching his favorite show, Twin Peaks, and talking about each episode. We just put up the season 1 finale yesterday. So that was fun. Hey, we've got a store. Did you know that, Hemant?
What?
If you want, a tank top for lounging or a t-shirt for lounging, you can get it at our store. Or a onesie. You can get it at our store. And if you are in need of a cross stitch, you can get one at my Etsy store. Bitches Get Stitched Done. I do custom work. I'm working on a custom thing for a listener right this very second. So I think that's all I have. I'm on Twitter at Blueberry, BLUEBURIE. It's like if you said blueberry with a bad British accent, joke my friend thought of when we were 18. Now it's just with me forever. Yeah, that's it. Anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, we'll talk
See you next week, everyone. Bye.